So if I could, Ann, if you could help me advance the slide. So I'm here to talk about the development process, kind of how land gets developed, how it's starting at a pretty high level and then right at the ground floor, and then give you some specific examples that are relevant to Old Farm. And then the transportation planning process, a lot of interest right now in improving the transportation system all over Bend. So again, I want to give you all sorts of opportunities to get involved and help shape the what matters for you, whether it's trails or more streets, less congestion, whatever the issue is. I want to give you opportunities to get involved, and then just talk about neighborhoods. We're coming up with a whole different way to get more communication between neighborhood associations and the city council. We started that last night. There's a whole effort underway, so things are looking up. Development process. So this is a pretty linear way of looking at it, where somebody has an idea that somebody owns some property and says, I want to develop that property, I want to put some houses on it, I want to put an office building. They have to, in Oregon, we've got a fairly unique way of a land use system of how we use our land. The state has a lot of sort of authority in distinguishing between what's urban and what's rural. So some of what we talked about before, the septic to sewer, is a lot of the subdivisions got developed in the county, very rural standards, and as the city grew, they annexed in that land. Well, the better way to plan a city, in my opinion, is you put the infrastructure, of a plan for that infrastructure, and you're growing in a more orderly fashion. We're working on doing more of that, and I think we're inheriting some of these, we're all inheriting these situations and having to get out of them. So again, understanding this process is key to preventing it from happening in the future. What I often say though is folks see buildings going up and they want to get involved. Well, it's too late. Once the project's underway, time for public involvement, it's kind of long gone. So what I want you to take away is that land use process is key, and your neighborhood association has a land use committee that's their job is to kind of watch what's going on. There's specific requirements that our process has that entitle you to notice and hearings and input to make sure that that development fits within your neighborhood. So starting from this really high level of how it all works, our plan, the city has a comprehensive plan. We're required to have a comprehensive plan that says how are you as a city, as Bend, going to accommodate growth. So in Bend, we're a city in Oregon, so I'm going to compare us to a city in Colorado, for example. In Colorado, if you're a city, there's a lot more local control than we might have here in Oregon. In Colorado, a city can decide, we don't want growth. We want to limit growth or slow it down. We're going to limit the amount of building permits. And so a city in Colorado could do that. Cities, I'm just picking on Colorado. There's other states that allow mechanisms for cities to do that. In Oregon, we don't have that ability. So in Oregon, cities cannot say, you know what, we've had enough, we don't want any more growth, we're going to limit it. If you do that, the state requires you to declare a moratorium, and then the state says you've got 6 months to plan your way out of it. So the good and bad. The good news is that the state of Oregon requires a lot of planning. There's a lot of investment to ensure that you're accommodating that growth. Bad news is there's not a lot of local control. So growth is coming. Bend's an attractive place. The key is to plan for it and to do it in an orderly fashion to make sure that there's good funding, that we don't end up in situations that we're all having to go through. So zoning is the best way to give some certainty to neighborhoods. And so that previous slide, Ann, if you go back, is the zoning for Old Farm. So you'll see different shades of yellow. That's primarily residential land. So a brighter shade of yellow is a lower density residential land, and kind of the standard density is the kind of creamish yellow. Red along 3rd Street, that's commercially zoned property. And so that zone really determines how intensely you can use that property. And with it comes rights. So as a property owner, if your property is zoned, you are protected. And if the city cannot just change the zone on you, we have to provide notice. And that zoning and that plan is all connected to population growth. So our job as the city is to ensure that we have enough room to accommodate what is planned to move here. And our projections are to have about 130,000 people by the year 2030. There's a question.
You said they can't change the zone. I live on Orion Drive, and after 37 years, it's zoned single family. They let a chiropractor go in and put a business in there. The CCNR say no, the city of Bend, and we had code enforcement at my house,
Yeah.
they couldn't care less.
So the
So
question,
don't tell me that they can't change the zone because they arbitrarily did.
so let me answer repeat the question for everybody. So the question is, somebody had you said you can't change the zone, but there is a home occupation. Somebody has a home occupation in their business in a residential zone, and that's allowed. The CCNRs don't allow it, I'm sorry, and the city does not enforce CCNRs. So I would look to this, the CCNRs, look to your CCNRs and your HOA to enforce it. That sort of overrides it, but the city does not enforce CCNRs.
But they did change the zone.
Yes.
How do you get a copy of that? I don't know what my property is zoned under. How would I get a copy of that?
So if you're interested in knowing what your property is zoned, there's a city mapping service on our website, so www.bendoregon.gov, and there's a search and just go zoning map, and you'll find it. There's many different ways to find it.
And we'll email it out after the meeting as well in the next few days too.
Yes.
With regard to the chiropractor zone, CCNRs do not allow it. However, no one in the neighborhood knew what was happening until a permit was issued, because the city then says, he can build an ADU. He changed the ADU to an office. It's now a commercial chiropractor's office in a single-family dwelling neighborhood.
So the question is around this chiropractor that is operating. There is the ability to have a home business. So again, regardless, so I'm going to put aside the issue of a CCNR. That is not a zone change. So that a home occupation, so if somebody is has a side business in their home, they have the ability to do that. That's currently allowed in residential zones. Now, again, that's separate from CCNRs. If CCNRs don't allow that, you can take enforcement action through your HOA on that. Okay, so starting from this sort of high level, this plan, this 20-year plan has not just how land is going to be used in colors on a map, but also that plan dictates how it's going to be served with water, sewer, roads. All of that is done through that comprehensive plan. And so when we look at a project, it's sort of how does it fit within that comprehensive plan? So if a developer comes, we don't just say, oh, well, it looks like that building will fit on that piece of dirt. It's also how does that proposed use make sure that we're getting enough jobs, that we have the housing, we're meeting our housing needs, that we have the infrastructure to support it, the water, sewer, roads. And then we charge for that infrastructure, and we look at what the capacity is. So if a development is coming, there is what's called system development charges. Those are impact fees that developers have to pay their fair share of growth. So they pay sewer SDCs, water SDCs, transportation SDCs, and parks SDCs. And that is done to be able to connect that growth back to that infrastructure plan. So if that plan requires a new road or a new sewer pipe, there's an impact, and that impact gets shared based on the intensity of the development. Question?
You just said that you do sewer stuff, and you just said all the rest of the city, and we got nothing. We went without sewer forever. What's going on?
That's what I'm saying. I said
You know
this.
that's not what you just said.
The issue is that that's what did not happen with 30 years ago when this property got annexed in. And I agree with you. I agree with you that I wish that would have happened. I didn't do that. None of you all did that. We inherited it. We've got to get through it.
We're not getting through it.
We have a citizen committee we have people that live in this neighborhood that are part of it, that are going to be part of the solutions, and we're involving folks that are directly impacted to figure out how to get through it.
But the thing is that you're not taking care of the problem. You keep advancing forward. Exactly. Instead of stopping and saying and taking care of what needs to be taken care of.
All right. So again, I'm not disagreeing with you. Why we are setting aside money, we are putting efforts towards, we have a whole team here to try to help this community through this problem. It's happening.
We don't believe it.
We have dollars.
We just don't believe it.
Okay.
That's all there is to it.
I really don't want to, I'm happy to talk to folks afterwards, but I know there's more information I'd like to share, and I don't want to, I want to respect everybody's time here. So I'm going to keep moving, and happy to talk to you afterwards. Happy to talk to you afterwards. So going kind of down to that specific kind of what's happening on the ground is when a development comes in, we look at, I've already covered this, kind of SDCs and how we pay for growth. I want to transition and talk about transportation, which this is a hot topic right now. I think we have folks talking about street maintenance and how do we improve the condition of our roads, but we're also talking about how do we move people around, move vehicles around, people around more efficiently. And we're doing that through a big community-wide effort. So we've had what's called a transportation system plan. So this is the road network that's specific to the Old Farm neighborhood that shows you where the main roads, kind of the collectors and arterials, and how it works. And our goal here is to have a grid system where people have choices. If you funnel all the traffic in one area, that's where you get a lot of congestion. The challenge that we have, and I know it very well, is Reed Market, right? So we want to get Murphy up and over that dash line that you see, up and over that railroad. Council, and the handout in the back has a strategy, a capital improvement strategy. About $40 million is available over the next 5 years from those impact fees. So growth is paying, and those dollars are being accumulated, and a majority of those dollars, about 30 of that 40 million, is being deployed on the east side of Bend to address congestion issues, mainly on the north end and on the south end. So Murphy, and then on the north end is Empire, connecting these roads. So the more that you can have a connected grid system, the more that you're going to disperse traffic. So give people options to how they travel. So that transportation system plan, we have an existing plan that's connected to the urban growth boundary and this big plan that we have for the city, but there's opportunities to make it better and to make it more reflective of what the neighborhood needs and wants. So, if it's congestion issues, if it's safety, there's a huge opportunity right now. We have a citizen committee that's going to be working over the next 2 years. Council's just in the process of selecting that group. There was 90 people that applied for it. We had folks from every neighborhood. We had quite a few folks from the Old Farm neighborhood. There will be representation from the Old Farm neighborhood on that group. The neighborhood association, even beyond just that group, there's going to be specific efforts done at the neighborhood association level to get a better understanding of what your priorities are for Old Farm. And so that is going to result in an update to that plan, as well as how do we fund it? How do we as a community get the kind of system that we want? So unfortunately, this is sort of the same conversation that we had with sewer. It's similar to transportation. Federal government used to have a lot of funding for infrastructure, federal and state government. That doesn't exist anymore. So what the kind of community we want, we all have to sort of pay, we all have to contribute towards. And we put a lot of that on the backs of the folks that are contributing growth. So developers pay their fair share, but we also have some existing deficiencies that we all as a community have to take care of. And so that's what we're looking for a variety of solutions, not just through SDCs, but also franchise fees from grants. We're in the process of applying for, there's competitive federal grants that we're in the running for, and then looking at bonding efforts as well. Question?
So as far as you saying everyone's getting together and, discussing what's happening in the neighborhood and stuff, and we all know Reed Market hasn't really worked out, will there be an opportunity for our area to discuss the land swap for the high school and the middle school that's going to put a lot more traffic on Reed Market?
So the question.
Still adjusting to the sewer.
Sure. The question is about the school. So you probably saw in the paper there's some proposed options of looking at putting the school on Knott and 15th. The school district currently owns property that's on Country Club Road and just south of Murphy. So they're kind of looking at those options right now. Their enrollment growth is necessitating both a middle school and high school, high school and eventually middle school. So those are large enough projects that they require a lot of additional planning. So it's called a master plan, and that master plan is going to require neighborhood involvement. And I'm going to show you a real life example of a master plan with Stone Creek. If you're familiar with Stone Creek, that was a master plan. So you're going to get an opportunity to have your say as to how you want to make sure that the infrastructure needs are met. So yeah. Yes.
Is anything being considered for the railroad crossing on Reed Market?
Well, the railroad crossing on Reed Market, so we had limited dollars back in 2011. The council at the time had a retiring bond. It was about $30 million. And so we said, how can we provide enough transportation projects throughout the city? We had limited funds, so we said the railroad crossing to take Reed Market up and over the railroad at that time, we were in the middle of a recession, and so council said, do a fiscally constrained project. And so it was an upgrade. It was a lot less expensive to do. It was $14 million just to do the rebuilding of it. Eventually, as growth picks up, yes, there'll be more overcrossings, but right now, there wasn't the funds to do it. So again, just like there's not unlimited funding for transportation. We have to prioritize. And so the next project that is in the queue is Murphy, and that will go up and over the railroad.
And why do we no longer have state and federal funding for these things? What can we do?
I wish I could answer that question of why don't we have state and federal funding? What can we do about it? That's probably a question for somebody else, but it doesn't exist anymore. It really doesn't. You don't have infrastructure funding coming from our local government. Yes?
The circle at Reed Market, it's already backed up. So if you put this through Murphy to 15, that's going to put more load on the circle. Is there anybody looking at that?
So there's
it's crazy now.
Yeah, so the issue is 15, so when you put Murphy through, is that going to make it even worse? Again, the idea is it's not just Murphy, it's also connecting Chase Road. You see these other dashed lines, you're providing more east-west. Part of the long-term vision is to have more that east-west connectivity, and so that you're going to spread that load throughout the whole southeast part of Bend.
Then, of course, you have American Lane that dumps out onto Reed Market, and that's another problem that's becoming a real big problem, especially people making a left-hand turn onto onto American Lane off Reed Market, which backs everything up to the
I don't disagree with you. There's a lot of, right, yes. So that's part of why you develop a transportation system plan, because you have to look at the whole thing. And so we have transportation models that show intersections that are failing. All that you've mentioned, they show up as this is failing and it needs to be addressed. And that is part of this whole effort to, what's it going to cost to fix all that stuff? And we don't have unlimited dollars, so let's take the most cost-effective approach and see what we can get. By just making some of these connections here that aren't super expensive, we can get better traffic flow. So let's try to do that. You in the back and then.
So with the new Park and Rec's 210 parking spots and the new commercial lot and the 92 houses all around Reed Market, is it really prudent to do it on Murphy Road instead of Reed Market? Or maybe can we have